I welcome you all in the morning session of our spiritual retreat. Today is the 5th day, and we are honored to have Sri Shraddhaluji with us, who will take us on spiritual journey again. So all of us who are not familiar with him, I'm reading out his profile so that we can get to know him better. Sri Shraddhaluji Ranade is a scientist, educator and scholar based at the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry, India, where he grew up in care of late Sri M.P. Pandit, from whom he received his training in the theory and practice of the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. He has been deeply involved in educational research and teachers training program for over 20 years and has conducted intensive teacher training workshops in integral education and value-based education all over India and abroad. Over the years, more than 5,000 teachers from over 220 schools and colleges have benefited from these programs. His book titled Introduction to Integral Education has been widely acclaimed and is considered compulsory reading in many schools. He specialized in physics, mathematics, and computer sciences, integrating them seamlessly with his philosophical, metaphysical, and spiritual studies. He has been involved in research projects including artificial intelligence based on neural networks, multimedia search and retrieval, image processing and video processing, and assorted simulation tools. He was deeply involved software research and development for 25 years and for about 10 years in media development, including television programming. He has traveled all over the world in over 30 countries, delivering lectures and conducting workshops on integral education, management by conscious sciences, self-development, the integral yoga, and spiritual practices. He has addressed corporates group from a wide variety of sectors and has been a speaker at several Rotary International conferences, the United Nations, and several other forums. He believes firmly that the world is transiting into a new paradigm of living based on a new and spiritual consciousness. So here we are. Over to you, Shraddhaluji, for the session on secret of successes in life.
We recognize that in all of our efforts in life, we're seeking for some kind of a success, whatever that word means for us. And we're not too sure what it means. But in our discussion so far, what we recognized was that the success is not just about being wealthy or having power or being famous. It's about feeling deep satisfaction within you. And we can ask ourselves, what will give us satisfaction? What activity or what form or what experience? And each person may find that the thing which satisfies them most is different from others. And it may involve having some comfort or wealth or power. But that in itself does not give satisfaction unless it leads to something deeper. And we came to the basic distinction between the Western approach to life and the Indian approach is that in the Indian context, we view ourselves as a soul in evolution and not primarily a desire-driven machine. You see, the Western biological model looks at you as a bundle of cells which have been put together or have fallen together by chance in an evolutionary process, and its primary drive is desire to survive. Survival of the fittest, isn't it? Survive and procreate, because that's the impulse of life. But is that it? Is that all? Would that explain the greatness of the high civilizations and the beauty and the art and the literature and the scientific endeavor? All this cannot be explained by the impulse of desire-driven survival. It can only be understood if we recognize that you are first and foremost a conscious soul in evolution that has consciously taken birth in this body, in these circumstances where you are, for the purpose of realizing its own potential. And part of that potential has an artistic element, has a research element, has a creation element, has a discovery element, has an adventure element. And all these are deep impulses of the soul, and it is this which can explain the true character of the greatness of civilizations when they have been great. Rather, when we fall back to a level of pettiness, of survival of the fittest and personal desire, everything sinks and collapses to a very crude and low level. What you see a lot of petty politicking in public life is coming from that survival desire drive. The greatness comes when someone has an urge to sacrifice for a greater cause, to build something wonderful which will outlast them. And those impulses don't come from desire and survival instincts, they come from the soul's aspiration. So, the first recognition we will make in our own life is what will give you deepest fulfillment will not be chasing after desire. Yes, that will have its place. What will give you deepest fulfillment and therefore success to yourself will be to follow your deepest drive, whatever that may be. And I will even say, by definition, that deepest drive will be unique to each one of us, because each one of us is unique as a soul in evolution, isn't it? So there are two keywords now which are introduced and which are dealt with in great detail in the Bhagavad Gita by Sri Krishna: Swabhava and Swadharma. Loosely translated into English, we will say Swabhava is your natural temperament. What's your temperament? And where does that temperament push you to? You'll find some children naturally tend to be introspective. They will stop, they will think. Others will be temperamentally outgoing. They will rush out, they will want to meet and hug and play and excitedly express themselves. The two are differences of temperament. There's some who like to be alone, there's some who like to mix. And if you push the person who likes to be alone to try to mix, he will feel himself very strange, uncomfortable. And this is your temperament, your swabhava. But the swabhava with which you begin in the young body is still forming. It's like a flower which is beginning to bloom. If you look at the flower bud, looking at the bud, you cannot say what kind of a flower it will be. And when the bud begins to flower, first the outer petals will open out. And until the outer petals open, the next layer petals will not open, cannot open. So in your own personality, in your own swabhava, there are layers which will unfold. And that is driven by the core of the flowerness, that is the soul of the flower, which is trying to manifest through this swabhava, through so many layers of development. So that deep inside you already knows the beauty of the flower, that is to express that you will be maybe 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, doesn't matter when. Sometimes the more rich and complex the flower, the more layers need to open. And sometimes the flower opens very quickly and then it wants to just enjoy the play of the garden and the interaction with the bee and the butterflies and the gardeners. Each one of us is unique, but always driven by that uniqueness, which is the deepest, inmost soul within you. So our starting point will be this. You have a natural temperament, swabhava, but within that is something which is manifesting, which is the truth of your deepest identity, what you are, your soul. And we will use the word there, swadharma, that which holds, upholds, carries you to become truly, to manifest yourself. These are two words which you will come across again and again in your life. And you will review, you will look at yourself and review, what is my temperament? What is it that my deepest call and aspiration seeks to express? And it will go in layers. So let's say you're at an age when certain skills are developing. Your body is not fully grown. You're not yet in an adult body. So often what will happen, the impulse within you will drive to exercise, play, run around, develop new skills. Learn to play an instrument, learn to sing, learn to do cartwheels, learn to do many things. which the body needs to fully develop itself. Equally, your emotions are growing. And one of the very important elements of the emotional development is relating to others and managing complexities of likes, dislikes, conflicts of communications. And unless you engage yourself with others, you will never be able to develop those. And then your intellect, the power of the mind is developing. And intellect is one of the many powers. There are many other powers which want to develop. Intuition is a still deeper power. And all of these are trying to push slowly, and like petals are just beginning to unfold. So, if you wish to be successful in life, if you wish to attain true fulfillment and deep satisfaction in your life, you have to give time for these layers to unfold. And none of these layers unfolding will be the final product, but they will all contribute to the final product. So, I'm going to put this in a practical form. What do you have to do, or what do you have to not do? Observe yourself. Observe the things which give you satisfaction, deep satisfaction, not superficial, momentary. Eating a piece of sugar candy may give you momentary satisfaction, but there are certain fruits when you eat, the juice of it fills you with a kind of deep satisfaction that you stop craving after that. Notice the difference. So there are short-term satisfactions, and then there are deep and lasting satisfactions. Observe first. And the moment you begin to observe, you become conscious, automatically you'll find yourself pulled to those things which give you more and deep satisfaction. At that point, you will find that deeper nudge already begins to guide you. You will find, for example, somebody playing a beautiful instrument and you say, wow, I wish I could play like her. And the first instinct for you will be pick up the instrument and try to learn. But perhaps an adult may tell you, look, that's difficult. Don't. One day later you will do. Or your parents may tell you, but you started learning tabla already. Why do you want to take sitar now? First learn that properly. And often that will cut across a natural unfoldment of the petals. Yes, there's a truth to what they say. Certain things may be difficult. Yes, you should develop more of what you've started, but the natural urge within you, often it's like a compass. It points to the true direction and says this. And the key for you to understand is you're not learning that because you want to be an expert musician for the rest of your life as a career. You're learning that because you're developing a skill of your personality and because it gives you deep satisfaction within you. Now, when you start thinking in this way, you will find your immediate journey, let's say for the next 10 years, while you are primarily a student, will be experience all possibilities which give you deep satisfaction. Develop all the layers of your personality as they unfold. And when the intellect unfolds, it will want to argue, it will want to get into conflict of ideas and argue out and prove itself wrong. And the play of ideas will be fun. And at that time you will play. But knowing that this also is one of the petals. It's not the thing. What will be the final form does not matter. That form will be beautiful when all the petals are fully developed and fully harmonized. And if you work on the petals and developing yourself in all your possibilities, however briefly you may learn tabla, learn to sing, learn to play badminton or whatever, football, however briefly you may do, the benefit of the deep joy and the growth of skill is what you concentrate upon. The result will be, as you unfold in life, whatever circumstances come to you from outside, you will be able to meet them from a poise of strength and satisfaction and effective result. Now, this is a very important word, effective. You've seen a lot of people try to do something, but they are not successful. They're unable to. Why? Because they didn't develop their tools. A lot of people, when they suddenly get wealth, they don't know how to manage their life. They suddenly get power, they don't know how to manage power. They suddenly get fame, they don't know how to manage fame, and it goes to their head, we say. They lose reference. But when you're grounded within you, that is the true you within, All of these are experiences of life. They will never cloud you. So when you build your foundation on your Swabhava and your deeper aspiration and the Swadharma, you will grow to be so complete that whatever circumstances come, you will be able to act with effectivity. So this is the first shift we will make in our understanding, that if you wish to be successful and fulfilled in your life, all that you need is already within you, but as a potential. And all your activities outside you will be means now for developing that potential. Okay? So work in the coming years to explore all possibilities. There are things which you will be tempted. People will tell you, oh, come on, just take one sip, one smoke, and the temptation will be there. And yes, but what about? But you've also been warned by others that there are things you can take which you can experiment with, which can damage your body in the long run. There are, for example, chemicals that you can take which immediately signal to the brain to stop growth. And the result is your intellect will get stunted. If you indulge in that experience, whatever high it may give you in that moment, you will regret for life. I have friends in the United States who actually tell me this, that in their teenage years, they often took drugs, whatever was popular at that time. And the result is 20 years, 30 years down, they can feel that in their power of thought, there is something not working well, or in the memory, something is undeveloped. There are medical researches which show you, and this is measurable, this is so objective, that if you take certain drugs right now, just once, it has an effect on the brain circuitry in a manner that leaves an imprint for life. If you take a smoke just once from a cigarette, because some friend says, okay, try it out, it's fun. You smoke once, it affects the nicotine in the bloodstream, affects the genetic level of the cells, and it changes something which is detectable by a genetic test for the rest of your life. Now, whether that was helpful or harmful, that is what you have to see. And the general consensus of medicine is it is harmful. The general consensus of the experience of civilizations is that it is harmful. And so you must consciously distinguish between something which is an experiment for your growth and an experiment which may harm your growth, knowing that it may harm. Sometimes you may do something without knowing. That's a different story. So I make this important point because you will face all these things. The media, cinema is always dumping all these ideas on you that this is normal. No, it's not normal. Nature does not provide them. Yes, they are plants, but nature does not provide them as a normal habit of food or lifestyle. So make a clear distinction between deep satisfaction that has a lasting value and short-term sugar high, which may actually harm your body. The word again in Sanskrit is Shreya and Preya. Shreya is that which is greater, which is lasting. Preya is that which is pleasing in the short term. So in the short term, it feels nice to hit somebody and to criticize them and make them feel bad. But is that a deep, lasting happiness? I still remember today, in my childhood, we were playing and then somebody criticized someone and she felt very bad and the rest of us imitated the first person. I look back and I say, I wish I could say I'm sorry, because that's not me. That's not truly what I am inside. But I cannot undo that. It was done. Every time you have an impulse, and these are the desire impulses which the West so highly values. Every time you have a desire impulse, pause, step back and assess, is this what you truly want? Is this what you truly are? Will this give you that deep satisfaction? When you look back 10 years from now, will you say, oh, it was worth it? Ask yourself this question. Sometimes you may still get carried away in the impulse of the moment, but if you create this habit of referring to your deepest aspiration, knowledge, swadharma, then the habit will quickly form and stay as a reference, and it will protect you from a lot of things which you might otherwise regret in life. And as you follow that line of your Swabhava and Swadharma together, what happens? You experience satisfaction because you're doing things which you want to do, which you actually are already within you. Now comes another important idea. Every time that you create a painting, let's say you've started to paint something, you don't always know what you will paint. As you're painting, you come up with a certain product, and suddenly someone says, "Oh, it's so beautiful." You look at yourself and you look at the painting, you notice the painting expressed the state in which you were, or rather, the thing inside you got expressed in your creativity. If at that point you were upset, you were angry, you were feeling jealous or disturbed, even the lines you draw, try to draw a perfect circle. It will not come straight. It will be jagged. On the other hand, when you're happy, deeply satisfied, content, connected with nature and the beauty of nature, at that point you draw, whatever you draw will come beautiful. So here's an insight. All your creativity, all your expression is an expression of what you truly are within you. What within you is a potential as a soul that you have brought when you took birth is what becomes now your expression in life, becomes you and all that you do. So here's the secret of being able to be effective. Refer to that, put yourself in alignment with that, and what will come out in your action will be good, beautiful, and true, spontaneously, with no other effort. If you have learned to play a musical instrument, try this. Try to play the instrument when you're angry. And then put yourself into a state of calm and clarity, and then play again, and you'll see the difference. Your inner state always reflects and defines your outer circumstance. This goes actually very far. It's a profound insight. You will find as you grow older and you begin to engage with life, the circumstances outside you will reflect your inner condition. Let me put it in another way. If you're a grouchy person, people around you coming to you will look at you and say, "You know what, I don't like this person," and they'll walk away. You go over to somebody who is in a happy mood, your grouchiness will put them in a bad mood and they will react to you negatively. On the other hand, if you're naturally a happy and content person, you go to an unhappy person, they look at you, they feel your contentment, and they respond in a nice way to you. So your circumstances of life often become a mirror for reflecting what is already inside you. So the key is this: the more you align yourself to your deepest truth of what you already are, the more complete, perfect, effective, and satisfying is your action and the circumstances of your life. You know, there are people who will keep saying, "I work so hard, but I don't make any money." And if they were to look inside themselves, they would find something which is out of sync. And if they were to correct that, then it will happen. I'll give an example. You see, my mother, as part of her work in the ashram, she sits in a bookstore. And once she was busy, so she asked me to sit in the bookstore. I sat there. And for a few days, I had to sit for a couple of hours. And when I sat there, I said to myself, "You know what? I don't want to be disturbed. What will I do if people come and ask for things?" And in my mind, there was something that did not want to be disturbed. And the result was, whenever I sat, there were no sales. And then I said to myself, "You know what? I think I'm repelling them. Let me change my attitude." I opened myself to embrace everybody who's coming. And I said, "You are welcome, and I will embrace you with love," with my heart, of course, not physically. And people began to come. And suddenly that day, the sales shot up. And immediately I recognized my inner state was the cause. So when someone says, "You know what, I try so hard, but things don't happen in my life," they're not conscious what inside them is actually inviting the opposite outcome. While they're trying hard on the surface part with their action, with their desire, with their force of mind to do something which does not work because they're out of sync with their inner being. So, key to success key to fulfillment, key to effectivity in life and true satisfaction, align yourself to your deepest aspiration. And the more aligned you are, the more these things will happen in alignment, spontaneously, almost effortlessly, we will say. Okay? Now, in the action though, in your personality, there will be certain tools which will amplify your effectivity. And I'm going to touch upon a couple of them, maybe 3 of them. These are the most important because these are like the essential tools. If you have this, you can do everything else. Okay? There are a couple of questions. I will come back to the questions shortly, but I will note them. I've noted that. So 3 tools which I want to highlight. First, in everything you do, you will notice that when your mind is fully involved, fully engaged, you're able to understand better. If at that time, while you're concentrating, somebody calls, your phone goes bing, some television is on in the room and your sight turns repeatedly, you cannot put your mind in what you do. Concentration is the ability to gather all the threads of your awareness into a single point and hold it in that point. Why is this important? I'll give you an analogy. Above me is a tube light, a bulb of, I think, 40 watts. And the light it gives spreads all around, and some of it is reflecting on me. And the light is barely enough. But if those 40 watts, all the rays which are spreading out, if those 40 watts were brought together into a single narrow beam, what we call a laser beam, a single narrow beam of laser would cut through steel and go to a distance of at least 10 or 20 kilometers, at least, depending on how much haze there is in the air, and still harm somebody at a distance of 10 kilometers. That same bulb, which right now is all scattered, has the power to cut steel. And that's the situation of your mind. In your mind, your powers of thought are currently all scattered. Your thinking is all spread out. And when you concentrate, it's as if you're bringing all the threads of your awareness into a single point like a laser and concentrating exclusively on the thing. And at that point, like a laser, you cut through the problem and you have the insight. You understand, you break through to solve and get the solution to the problem. So this power of concentration is your single most important tool to be effective in life. Okay? How will you develop this? It's like muscles. The more you use it, the more they grow. If you do nothing and sit like couch potato for a few days watching TV, after a while you'll find your muscles have shrunk. But if you get up every day, do some activity, exercise the muscles, they grow. It's a dynamic state. It grows or it shrinks, but it doesn't stay static. And it's the same with your mind, powers of your mind, and particularly the power of concentration. But there are ways you can use to consciously develop. One of the first things to do is remove distractions. If your phone is on and keeps binging every now and then, pulling your attention, or if there is television in the room, you see, television is a flickering light, and any flickering light has a hypnotic effect. It automatically, instinctively pulls your sight. You cannot but look at the TV because it pulls you. So you want to build concentration, put your phone on silent, turn it upside down and put it away. So if there are calls, you will see them later. Close the doors, get into a room where there's no TV, there's no other interruption or distraction of any kind, and then sit. Then consciously gather all of your awareness. You'll feel your mind is as if spread out. Just observe. You'll feel it's like spread out all around here. Gather all your awareness into a single point, center of forehead, and from the forehead, as if a laser beam, focus full attention on the thing at hand. Whether you're reading some text, whether you're trying to solve a problem, whether you're trying to paint something, does not matter what you do. Or you're writing something. You bring full attention to a point where nothing in the world exists except this. And then you swing into it. You are pulled into it, and then you'll find one of the most amazing experiences, and you've all had it at one time or other, but you'll do it consciously every time. The most amazing experience is what comes through is so good, and then suddenly when you've completed, you look at the time and you're surprised. Depending on the state in which you are and the kind of work you do, you will say, oh, 1 hour has passed and it felt like 5 minutes. Or sometimes you realize, oh, it's only 5 minutes. It felt like 20 minutes have passed. So in fact, what happens is sense of time changes when you concentrate. And the more effective your concentration, the more you're able to do in a shorter time. So normally what you would do as a study of 1 hour, with a concentrated focus, you can achieve in 20 minutes. That's 1/3 the time typically, which leaves you 2/3 of the time free to do other things or to do other work or to all of that is to be done also with concentration when you do it, isn't it? So not only you will enjoy better, not only you will do better, but you will have more time to do all these things. So this is one key tool to effectivity. It's the single most important tool for everybody. The second tool, which derives from the power of concentration as a next power, is what we will call the willpower. And the willpower is what allows you to do what you want to do, when you want to do, for as long as you want. Now watch what happens typically. I want to do this, but I wish I could do that. Okay, I'm going to force myself to do it. My parents are pressuring me and I force myself to do it. And I'm hungry. Oh, I remember all the things which I have not done. The scattering, it's a power of concentration which is gone, but with it, the willpower gets scattered. So once you've worked a little bit on the concentration, you'll find you can concentrate your willpower. Direct all of yourself to that single one thing that you want to do, when you want to do, and hold as long as you want to do. When you are able to do that, the result will be you can set your time. At any time you decide, okay, I want to do this, you can get yourself to do it. You don't need someone else to push you. You don't need external pressures. You become master of yourself and of your time and of your life. You know, there are people who get so much work done in a single day. And then there are other people who are always saying, oh, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, and they do practically nothing the whole day. Nothing is accomplished. And the difference is this: concentration, willpower. And so the mother says, if you develop these two things, concentration and willpower, you can attain to anything without exception. Anything. And this is a very powerful statement. You want to be a great artist, you want to be a great musician, you want to be a great businessman, you want to make a lot of money, whatever you may want to do, willpower, concentration combined together, you can achieve. So these are very powerful tools for effectivity. And I'm going to add a third one. The third tool for effectivity is the recognition that within you, what you carry, your self-worth, you, is the most precious thing in the whole universe, at least for you, isn't it? That sense of self-worth, that within you is something which is the most precious. And it does not matter whether others can see it or not, whether others know it or not. Now, this will lead spontaneously to what people call self-confidence. But self-confidence, as you're taught in the Western model, is a fake confidence. You know, they will teach you in finishing school, walk up to a person, shake hand and say, good morning, sir. Show confidence, pretend. Yes, it's all very good. And certainly it has some effect. But a person who's truly confident does not need to show it. You stand on the strength of what you are. You may not be perfect. You may not be complete. But what is within you as a potential is the soul, the divine. And that is the most precious thing. It's you're a child of the Divine Mother, and the divinity within you, that is your soul, is all beauty, all goodness, all truth, all joy. We use the word Sat Chit Ananda. But that is what you truly are. In the Veda, they say, you are children of immortality, Amritasya Putraha. And if you're a child of immortality, that is your true birth. And maybe you're not fully expressing your true worth, but you never lose the perspective of your true worth. So now when you walk into a situation, maybe you're not fully capable, maybe you're not experienced, but the fact that within you is all potential, you know that even if I fail in my effort, I will make the progress necessary and grow from this challenge. That deep sense of self-worth and self-confidence is already within you. You don't have to create, you don't have to pretend on the surface. Okay? So this will be your third tool for effectivity, the recognition that within you is all potential, all capacity, and that is your true self-worth. Now, this is the broad picture I have placed before you, and let me quickly summarize the important ideas. First, I made a distinction between success and fulfillment. The true sense of success is your deeper fulfillment, irrespective of what people see and think from outside, isn't it? And so what gives you fulfillment, and we look deep inside us, your deepest drive, which comes from the soul, and the soul's choice in taking birth, which has chosen your circumstances, your parents, even some elements of your personality, your swabhava, your temperament, your nature, and within it, the soul's purpose, which is your truth, your swadharma. These are the things with which you have come. And if you allow the flower to unfold petal by petal, and allow each petal to grow complete and healthy and integrated, well, at the end of the journey, or as the journey unfolds, the flower will bloom and you will be not only effective, fulfilled, and successful. And then, having had this big picture, we focused upon 3 tools or 3 powers which will assist you in your effectivity. And these powers are the powers of concentration, willpower, and the recognition of your true self-worth as a child of the divine, child of immortality, in which all potential, all capacity is waiting to flower. Now, this being the big picture, I have some more observations to make of how you will put this into practice in the form of your life's purpose. But that I will make as my closing comments. I want first to take a few of the questions which have been waiting, and maybe we can start with whoever would like to raise a question. You can either type it out or speak it out. I don't hear anything, so if the moderator will...
Aishwarya Khanna has asked a question. Sir, I'm struggling a lot this time. Can you hear me?
Okay, I cannot hear you very clearly. There's a text though from Maitri
Gupta. What's one change I should make right now
to help me get closer to my success? So right now what you need to do is recognize first that you have already within you certain impulses which are seeking fulfillment. Okay? Certain things you like to do which give you deep satisfaction, and perhaps even that you crave to do. You want to play a musical instrument, you want to be creative, you want to paint, whatever it is, you want to learn, you want to experience certain things, you want to be in a garden, you want to hug a tree, you want to arrange flowers, whatever it is, you want to learn something, study more of a particular area which fascinates you. Whatever it is that is within you right now, the most fulfilling drive, give to it the necessary time and energy. In doing that, you will find not only that your satisfaction will grow, your self-confidence will grow, but with the growth of satisfaction will be also happiness. And with the happiness growing, everything becomes a virtuous cycle. Sri Krishna makes a very interesting observation in the Bhagavad Gita. He says that it is more helpful for you to fail at doing something which is fulfilling for you than to succeed at imitating somebody else. It's a very profound idea. You may imitate somebody else and people will say, yes, you have done so well. But in yourself, you will say, yes, but. This is what happens with a lot of film stars. You may have heard stories, or you may have seen news items. It happens so frequently. Famous film stars who to us appear to be so successful, wealthy, famous, powerful, committing suicide for no reason, or having severe depressions, clinical depressions. And if you ask them why, they will say, all my life is fake. There's nothing I'm doing which is real. And that leaves them hollow. Whereas on the other hand, when you do something which gives you fulfillment, it does not matter whether you have succeeded in a dramatic way to impress others. Your satisfaction is what is your growth. So I'm going to give you another here interesting insight. Okay? What makes an activity interesting? Ask yourself this question. Let's say you went to a music program. Let's say you went to a theater program or a movie. You went to this movie, you come back, and you say, you know what, it was boring. You go to another movie or a music program and you come back and you say, wow, that was so interesting. Look at yourself as you have come out of these two rooms or these two events. What is the difference? In the first case, where you go and you come back and you say, it was boring, you went in as a person and you came out the same person. In the other case, when you went in and it was interesting, you came out, you're a different person because you've grown. Okay? So the keyword, what makes something interesting? When you experience you have grown as a result. Now this interaction we are having, if as a result of this within you certain things woke up and you realize, oh my God, yes, this makes so much sense, and it drew out certain possibilities within you, that you look at yourself and you say, I have learned something, I have changed in some way, it will be interesting. If after the interaction you say, oh yeah, but I have nothing new, well then it's boring. And that's the reason why many activities are interesting for a while and then they become boring, because the growth potential is limited. So let's say you go to a kind of a theme park. You went once, it was fun, great fun, you learned a lot. Second time, you learned less. Third time, boring, because now the learning potential has been exhausted. So either you approach with a different object and then you will learn, or you find a different space where you have new things to learn. Okay, I hope that answers your question. What do you do now? Well, you start doing the things which give you deep satisfaction and develop all the skills and capacities, experience everything a little bit, not to build a career, but to develop the petals of your personality. Okay, next question. When we are disturbed, what is the source of our contentment and concentration? And somebody else asked, when I'm in pain, I'm able to pour out my feelings on paper and then solitude becomes a bliss. But I'm jovial, then I struggle while writing, my creativity goes astray. Okay, so they're actually connected. When we are disturbed, what is the source of your contentment and concentration? Well, your disturbance is preventing you from your concentration. Your disturbance is preventing you from recognizing your contentment. You realize that? Because when you're disturbed, try to draw your painting, you cannot. You cannot express yourself. The disturbance is like a screen that is blocking who you truly are. What's the way out? Consciously make yourself quiet. Consciously remove the disturbance. Remember, disturbance is not a thing itself. You take water, the surface of a lake, the wind comes and there are ripples. So you'll say the surface reflection now is broken. That's your disturbance. But what is disturbance? It's not a thing. The lake, the water is a thing. But the disturbance is a distortion of the thing, of the truth, of what you are, of your calm and clarity. So the key is this. Recognize disturbance has no true power over you. It is only a passing surface ripple. What do? Instead of fighting the disturbance, lean back on the calm which is already within you. You become the lake or feel the silence of the lake which is behind the disturbance. It's a very interesting insight. So here you are agitated and disturbed. Feel what is behind, and you'll find there's a layer behind which is not disturbed. At that point, you can use certain tools to make that shift. One of them is slow, deep breathing. You notice your breath is intimately connected to the state of your mind and emotions. So let's say you're angry, you're upset, you're confused. How is your breathing? I am so angry. He did this. You're shocked. Rapid breathing. How do you reverse that? Deep, slow, measured. So consciously reverse. When you're calm, your breathing is deep and slow. When you're upset, your breathing is shallow and rapid. But it goes both ways. It's a link between the states. If you change your breathing, your state changes. So take a slow, deep breath and relax. So you do. Breathe out. And take a second breath, slightly slower this time and deeper. And a third breath, even more slow. When by the time you reach your fifth breath, you'll find your anger is gone, your upset is gone, and you have reached some level of calm. And at that point, you have access to that deeper silence which is already within you. And then you can consciously feel it and lean back into it. Become the calm of the lake without the disturbance of the wind. Do this consciously. Practice this every day if you like before going to sleep. Deliberately disengage from the disturbance of the day and find that deep calm and then go to sleep in that calm. Your quality of sleep will be better and you'll develop the skill to put yourself back into clarity and calm at will. Okay? So this is...
Shradhalu, there's a question earlier from Aishwarya Khanna which has gone up. It's, sir, I'm struggling a lot this time. I am a new student and my mom is admitted in the hospital and my dad is attending to her. At this time, I'm alone and bad thoughts. Her mother is in hospital and her dad is attending to her. At this time, she's alone at home and bad thoughts are coming to her mind. Sir, please guide what to do.
Okay. Absolutely. So what happens? Yes, what happens in such a situation? Your mind, first of all, is free of the normal routine. What would be your normal routine? Well, mom is preparing this, dad is doing this, I have got this. You're set in a routine and your thoughts are following the pattern of routine. Now, suddenly the routine is broken and your thought does not have a pattern to hold on to. Where does it go? It goes to the problem at hand, and there's a major problem now. And when it's free of any references, you start obsessing over the worst possibility. What if, and you can go over 20 different what ifs. But if you think rationally, you will tell yourself, yes, but maybe none of these things will happen. Why am I even thinking about it? But I can't help it. And you realize the problem is not your thought, but your emotions. Your emotions are agitated because that which represents for you your safety, your security, your most precious relationship is threatened. It's as if you are threatened. And at that point, the disturbance of the emotions clouds the mind and sways the mind and swings in all kinds of directions. What can you do? First step, what we already discussed, take a slow, deep breath. Calm your emotions. Make yourself as quiet as you can. As much. Maybe it's not perfect, doesn't matter. Once you're quiet, now your mind can be more free. And now start a rational thought. Okay, here's a situation. Dad is handling this. What can I do? Maybe I can do nothing physically. But what can I do psychologically? Pray, give love, give affection, surround my mother with the love and care and visualize what you want. Visualize her becoming well and coming back with full energy. Visualize and project that as the future that you wish to have. So what can you do? Physically, you can do nothing. Your dad's already doing what needed to be done. Psychologically, you can do a lot. Do that. But focus on the positive. So now you've consciously given your mind a positive focus. You will make a prayer. You will visualize and construct a positive outcome and project it with love and affection. In doing so, what happens within you? You're full of positivity. Contrary to what you were doing before, which was thinking the worst, you became full of negativity and so got into a horrible state. First step, use the slow, deep breathing to disengage from the habitual disturbance. Second, step back and observe what can you do and start doing positive interventions, whatever is required in that situation, and fill yourself with positivity and the situation with positivity, and you will actually change the situation for the better. Okay? The other question, okay, can a weak person become strong if he struggles, when he struggles? Okay, yes. Actually, I wish I could show you this, and I'll do this demonstration when I meet you next. I will ask one of you, whoever considers himself to be weak, to come up and stand next to me. I will make you do something which you find difficult to do. And then I will ask you to do a visualization exercise, and then suddenly your strength will triple, just like that. And it's to show you that actually the state of weakness is the result of scattered energy. And the visualization I'll make you do is to gather the energy and focus it into the arm, and suddenly your arm will become 3 times stronger. And it's actually dramatic when you demonstrate this. And this is the reality. Yes, gathered, concentrated energy will be far more effective. And of course, you can use other means. So physically, let's say your strength is less than a big person, then you can use skills which are taught in some of our martial arts, where you use the other person's strength to make them fall. And these are skills which can be developed also. But yours should be in a base of calm and clarity, centered energy, then you can be effective in this way. The Shreya and Prayer, yes, someone asked what that means. Shreyas. Shreyas is that which is superior, that which is greater, which stands above. And Prayer is that which is dear to you and momentarily satisfying, pleasurable, if you may use the term, versus deeply satisfying, and long term versus short term. There was an earlier question about somebody saying about, yes, when I'm in pain, I'm able to pour out my feelings on paper and solitude becomes a bliss. But when I'm jovial, I struggle in writing, the creativity goes away. Because the joviality, which you call joviality, is a state of scattered excitation. Whereas the state of pain is not the key, it's the solitude where you're gathered and centered. Now, so observe what happens. Let's say I am now unhappy, I'm in pain. So I go into my solitude, I withdraw. I am depressed even to some extent. And I say, oh me, my misery, why is the world so bad to me? But what has happened in the process, your excitation has become quieter. And at that point, you're able to focus more easily. Whereas when you're jovial, I am so happy and I'm all over the place, I'm scattered, how do I concentrate? Right? So it's not the sadness which is making you creative and effective, but it is the fact that you're gathered in the state of sadness. Now, if you could be happy in a calm, then you would be able to be as effective. And that's the way it should be. So the idea of joviality is not your goal. Yes, of course, you should be able to be jovial when needed, but the base of joviality is a calm joy, which is not an excitation. That should be a normal state of rest. And then everything becomes more effective. So someone has asked, Jyoti Mishra is asking, I've seen successful people always calm and composed, whatever the situation. Either they don't get affected by circumstances and criticism and challenges, or do not show that they have been affected. How do you develop this control over emotions? Well, that's what I've been describing. You have to build a habit. In a moment of crisis, you can't try to control and build calm. That's not going to happen. You build calm in your normal routine of the day. And for that, you will do that every evening before going to sleep. Center yourself in the process I've already described, so I won't repeat. Centered in that calm, you will go to sleep with the intention that when you wake up, you will be in this, and then the whole of tomorrow, you will be in this. Now, because you put that intention before going to sleep, it's like a post-hypnotic suggestion. It goes deep into your subconscious and it forms your personality from inside out. And you'll find very quickly, within days, you will see a difference. Within weeks, your personality will begin to exude that state of calm more and more. And calm does not mean passivity. You can be in full force of action, but from a poise of calm. And this is what they teach you in the martial arts. In the martial arts, you can't be jumping around. You will not be effective. You'll just get blown up. You're in a state of total calm and fully concentrated. Your fist moves so fast you can barely see, but it can only happen like the tiger leaping from a state of crouching where it is totally calm. It can leap with full force. Okay, that's the same thing happening within you energetically. Okay, I hope that answers the question.
So there's an Aditya Mishra.
So
there is an Aditya Mishra. He
yes.
says, "Good morning, sir. I've always been termed hyperactive by people and often struggle to concentrate on tasks which I'm supposed to do. What can I do to improve my concentration powers?"
Okay. So somebody has declared you hyperactive. Maybe they want to give you medicines. I hope not. Please don't take medicines. Unfortunately, this thing called attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity disorder is being labeled. And once you're labeled, well, you believe it and then you get swayed by it. These are all fake diseases. They are not diseases at all. They're simply patterns of habit or irritation in the physical nerves, which can come from the environment or the food. So I'm going to touch both. Now, it is a medical fact that if you eat colorings which are put in food, the colorings are chemicals which have no nutritional value, rather they are known to be nerve irritants. So when you eat those colorings and they go into you, they get inside the bloodstream, they hit the nerves, and the nerves suddenly begin to feel restless. And then you're sitting quiet, but your nerves are irritated. You can't sit quiet. You want to move. You need to move just like that for no reason at all because your nerves are itching from inside out. So first thing I will say, do a detox of your food. First eliminate all packaged content which have preservatives or food colorings. They may say permitted colorings, permitted preservatives. They are permitted, yes, but they are all poisonous to the nerves. Eliminate them. Stay with home cooked food as far as possible. And if you have to eat when you're traveling and you need to, well, okay, a little bit is fine, but don't make that your routine. The same thing with restaurant food. They will put colorings because they want to impress you so that you will buy a brighter sweet or a brighter food than a duller food. At home, we don't put colorings, fortunately, and you should not. So clean your food and a lot of the restlessness will reduce. First. Second problem, which a lot of people have today, is you don't have enough sleep. And the result of sleep deprivation is that your nerves are irritated and that makes you restless. At your age, you need a minimum of 10 to 12 hours of sleep from a medical perspective. And I'm sure you will tell me you're not sleeping more than 7 hours. Okay? So, give yourself enough sleep. And the best sleep is in the hours before midnight. I'll tell you why. You see, the sun the sun is at midnight exactly opposite to us, below the earth. Okay. So before midnight, the sun is going down relative to us, and all the life energies, all the prana is going down with the sun. After midnight, the sun begins the process of coming up. And with it, the prana energies begin to rise also. And they suddenly hit peak at the time of dawn. And that's why spontaneously we wake up at dawn. But if you want true rest, you should catch the downward movement of the prana, sleep by 10 if you can. Okay, 10:30 if you're not used to it. But start changing your sleep hours, sleep earlier, gradually shifting half an hour every day, and give yourself a minimum of 10 hours sleep. And you'll find all your hyperactivity, restlessness will calm down, your mind will become clear, and everything will become well. Third thing to do, perhaps over time, there's an element of habit of restlessness. And so you have to break that habit. And a simple way will be the exercises which I've already discussed, the slow, deep breathing and shifting into calm inside you. That, or you can combine it with a kind of basic pranayam called Nadi Shuddhi or Anulom Vilom, where you do alternate nostril breathing. These, and slow and deep, not fast and shallow, slow and deep. And you do that for 3 minutes every day. And that will immediately calm your system. Anytime in the activity of your routine of your class, if you find yourself restless, lean back, relax your body, take a slow, deep breath, and bring yourself back into calm. So you will need to do this again and again to break that habit until a new habit of deeper calm forms, and you will no more have this problem. Okay? So next question. So somebody asked how to develop willpower. I missed that it scrolled up. And this is a very important point. How do you develop willpower? Because I taught you how to develop concentration. Willpower also is like muscles, like concentration. The more you exercise it, the more it grows. But you can't exercise willpower to do something very difficult. Suppose you wanted to strengthen your muscles. You don't start by lifting a 100 kilo weight. You will tear your muscles. You take a 1 kilo weight and repeat 100 times. Isn't it? And the same thing you do for willpower as well as for concentration. You take something easy, concentrate with full attention as long as you can, and then break. And again, concentrate as long as you can, break. But on something easy, which is interesting for you. It's difficult to concentrate on boring things. So start with things. And the same with willpower. Take something very easy. So when I had to train myself for the willpower, I said to myself, look, it's nowhere near what it should be. I've neglected it. How do I start? And I'll suggest this as an exercise for you. Every day, every morning after your breakfast, wash your own cup. Whatever you're drinking, some juice or milk, you're drinking something. While someone is there to wash, you say, no, this one cup I will wash myself. You take the cup to the water, wipe consciously, make it clean, wash it, wipe it, and place it where it should be. That entire exercise will not take you more than 15 seconds, and it's very easy to do. Even if you're late, you can do it. Maybe you do it fast, you do it in 10 seconds, but you do it. And then you cling to this. That's the way you're going to build your willpower. Take something very easy and then persist. Now what will happen is the first 3 or 4 days, it'll be very easy to do. And you'll say, what is this? Why did I take something so easy? It's the 4th day that you'll find, something in you says, I wish I can just leave it. And logically, you think, there's no reason. Then excuse comes, I'm late for school. No, there's no reason. 10 seconds will not make a difference. You force yourself, push your body, do it, and arrange. And having done it, you'll find such a deep satisfaction. I actually did it. There's a very interesting thing the mother points out. She says, when you have a desire, you can satisfy the desire and you get a satisfaction. But if you master the desire, you get a much greater satisfaction. That's the difference between prayers and shreyas again. When you overcome with your willpower that tendency to let go and you make it happen in those 10-15 seconds, the satisfaction you will get, and bask in it. Feel good about it. Imprint that feeling in you and say, I look forward to this feeling tomorrow. And that's how you build with the joy the willpower. And then you continue this for a month. You will find in your schoolwork, spontaneously, when you want to do something, you will find it easier to do. The willpower having grown in that small exercise, it will be automatically effective in everything else that you do. Everything else will become easier for you. Okay? So next question. So someone has asked about concentration. I've already said the same thing. You start with something easy. Now, any other questions that I've missed?
What is the best advice you'll give to somebody who really wants success? The best advice to all of us regarding success.
Aim at fulfillment of your deepest aspirations. Build yourself layer by layer of petals to make yourself effective for whatever circumstances of life. And then you will fulfill yourself, and that will be your success. And it does not matter what form it is. I'll share with you a very interesting angle to this. I recently had a talk I gave at a school of management where all those who had passed with high-flying colors in their exams were sitting there. They were about to get awards. And I said to them, all that you have learned, which has given you that high standard in your exams, all of that is entirely useless in real life. So they were a little shocked. And I explained. I said, whatever you can be trained for, as your school has trained you for, anything that you can be trained for, I can train my computer, I can train my artificial intelligence to do better and faster than you. So you are totally replaceable if all that you have is the training given to you. So if you want to be replaced tomorrow by AI, well, then stay with what you have as your skills. If you want to do something meaningful that AI cannot replace, then you need to bring forward your creativity, that thing which is unique within you. And I'll say this to you, best advice for being successful, don't stay with the routine. Don't imitate others. Fulfill yourself in your deepest, truest creativity. No AI can replace you. No other human being exists in the world who can do what you are intended to do, what is your unique Swadharma. And that's your success, isn't it?
So
Next question.
Anshu ma'am is saying, greetings sir, can you suggest ways how to control anxiety problems? Sometimes this heavy feeling in heart does not allow us to concentrate well. The heavy feeling in heart does not allow to concentrate well.
But where is the anxiety coming from? Is it anxiety regarding your exams, regarding your friendships, regarding something at home? What's the source of the anxiety? You need to view that. And accordingly, you may need to adapt. Can the person respond with specifics of the anxiety? Then it will be more useful.
Anshu ma'am, you'll have to respond on the chat.
But what is the anxiety that you're seeing or experiencing? What is the cause of it? Because there are many kinds of anxieties.
Situations at home.
Okay. Yes. So
mostly personal.
Yes. We are facing today a world which is generally very confused and growing increasingly more confused as it is. And hopefully it will get better soon. But right now, things are confusing for many reasons. And one of the reasons is that people have been moving faster and faster, but without aim, without purpose, chasing superficial, meaningless desires. And one of the reasons for this is because they were trained to follow their surface desire, not their deeper aspiration. So the result is layers and layers of pretense. So somebody has attained to a certain level, he is not satisfied, he adds one more layer and another layer and another layer. And so the world is getting more and more confused. At some point it has to break. An example of a break event is the virus, for example. The pandemic has forced people to stop and review what is important. What is, for me, worthwhile? What do I really want? And so the life throws at you often a crisis that compels you to introspect. But in the process, sometimes, especially as a student, you face situations at home or in society which are outside your capacity to manage. You may see conflict among parents sometimes, among family members. You may have conflict with one of your siblings, or you may have other issues which just out of the blue. Whatever it is, at that point, if it is outside your capacity to manage, naturally it builds an anxiety because you feel helpless. So remind yourself, the key which we spoke of earlier, within you is all potential. Within that is also all the help you need, and is also the help that you can give to that situation. Sometimes you cannot give external help, but you can give inner help. You can pause, put yourself in a state of calm, and then wish for that calm to extend into those who are in conflict around you, let's say. Let's say there's a conflict happening between two family members. You feel overwhelmed, you feel disturbed. Well, center yourself, invoke the calm and peace within you, and then send it out and pray for that peace to settle and for those differences to reduce. That is within your capacity to do. In the process, you will be based deeper in the calm. Okay, so each time you put out a positive energy, you are filled with what you put out. Each time you put out a negative energy of anger, hatred, or fear, you are filled with the negative energy. And that's what makes you distressed and anxious. So break that cycle, because it's a vicious cycle. It makes you think more negative. Instead, consciously project a positive energy. You will be filled with the positivity, and it will break that chain and free you from the anxiety. And yes, of course, the situation is worth being anxious about. But what is felt within you is your choice, because that's your space. Outside you, you may not be able to change too much, but inside you, you can change. And you start with that, and then it will have an effect on circumstances also. Okay? Any other question? Good. I'm happy to see some of the comments. And so someone says, sometimes it happens that somebody is constantly doing the same thing again and again, which makes you lose your temper. And even if you try to control, you're unable to do. And we also know that we cannot say anything to those people. What do we do in those situations? Well, why can't you say anything to those people? Because they're adults. And or perhaps you're saying something will cause a stronger reaction from them. Let me put it this way. The anger which you experience when someone is knowingly doing wrong is not a regular anger. It is the impulse within you to correct a wrong. It is the heroic impulse that wants to break a falsehood. Okay? And when you hold that back, it's very difficult. You will end up, so to say, imploding on yourself. So you have to turn it into positive action. What that will be, that is where your skill develops. So depending on who it is, parent, teacher, or somebody else towards whom you have over whom you have no say or influence, you have to find the right way to exercise it. One way simply would be to approach the person and say, start with a positive thing. I appreciate all these things about you. Say the positive things which you appreciate. And it should be genuine. And then you say, but each time you do this, it causes me distress, or it makes me feel hurt. Each time you say those words, I feel bad. Can I request you to please say something, whatever it is, positive things you want. So often the error we make is to attack a person who's doing wrong without recognizing that maybe they are not even conscious that they're hurting you. Or when you tell somebody, stop this, we don't recognize that there may be a genuine reason why they may be doing this. So you have to offer an alternate. And you have to say, instead of doing it this way, can you do it that way? Each time you scratch your finger on the table, I get this pain in my nerves. Well, can you do it this way? So if you engage with goodwill and with a positive suggestion of how it can be corrected, you'll find most people are open and helpful. And very rarely you will come across somebody who's really, really nasty. But even then, if you're nice, they change. I'll share with you an example. This was a person who was in business, and he had to get a certain clearance from the government. And the fellow at the government office just refused. And months had passed, he would refuse clearance without any reason given. So finally, my friend asked for advice. I said to him, look, what's your feeling towards that man? He said, I hate him. So I said, that's your problem. And it's not easy, but if you can bring within you at least neutrality, but if you can bring a positivity, actually feel affectionate towards him, then you can reverse the situation. And I said, do it this way. Think about that man. He's so miserable sitting in his office saying no to everybody. He's going home. He's unhappy at home for some reason. And that unhappiness he is bringing into his office. You should feel pity for him. And my friend said, yes, you're right. His face is always full of pain. So I said, then from your heart now, genuinely put out goodwill and affection and wrap him with that affection and love. And he said, yes, this I can do now that I see that he's miserable. And then I said, every day you go to his office and say, I'm sorry, my work has stopped. I need your help and I will wait. I understand you have a lot of work. I will wait until you clear my papers. And just sit there. and greet him with positivity, with affection, with the genuine feeling, not a pretense. He did that. And within a week, that man said, I'm sorry, I've hurt you. He cleared his papers and became his best friend after that. Now, I give this as an example to show you that a lot is possible once we begin to see things from a deeper perspective. Okay? So, next question. And then I would like to close with certain observations.
There's just one. So Jyoti.
Yes.
Jyoti Mishra.
Yes.
I have seen successful people always calm and composed, whatever the situation might be. Either they do not get affected by the circumstances, criticisms and challenges,
yes,
or do not show that they've been affected.
Yes, I've already answered that one. Yes.
You already answered, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. Okay. So then let me move to certain closing observations. Okay. And I want to bring another important idea. You know, I said that you are a conscious soul that has taken birth with a purpose. Even if you don't remember it here on the surface, you feel it deep within you. But this is true not only of you, it is true of everybody. Even, I will say, it is true of the whole universe, which is born from the same source from which we come, from the Satchidananda, from the divine consciousness, isn't it? So think about it this way. From the same divine consciousness, the whole universe was born. In order to fulfill, to unfold like petals, the universe is also unfolding. We call that evolution, layers and layers of things unveiling and unfolding. And you also come from the same source with your own purpose of petals unfolding. Can the two be out of sync? Because the source is same. The intention is same. Although you are unique in your own way, your purpose and the universe's purpose are aligned. They are not in conflict. Do you get it? Logically? Once you recognize this, you have with you the single most powerful insight. The entire universe is here for the same purpose as you. Now there's the relationship between you and universe has to now change. First, you recognize everything in the universe is there to help you grow. Even things which seem to oppose you, they are there only to help you grow. How will you develop your muscles if you don't push against some resistance? So when the evolutionary impulse recognizes you're weak, it pushes you to help you grow and strengthen. It's helping you grow, not opposing you. Recognize that. So any situation that comes to you, recognize there is something to be learned from this, from which you will grow in knowledge, in strength, in love, in understanding, in skills, in willpower, whatever it is, you will grow from it. The universe is there, everything there is here to help you in some way, because we are here for the same purpose, the universe and you. Second implication of this is the universe cannot change itself easily. Remember, it takes a few billion years for life to evolve. But you can change yourself easily. You can achieve in one lifetime what will take 1,000,000 years of evolution, isn't it? You can change the way you think. And with your mind power, you can change your body. You can develop it to make it stronger, more plastic, more conscious. You can make your mind more large, more wide, more flexible, more creative. You can develop your heart to become more embracing and universal. You can speed up evolution in yourself. And the universe looks up to you to help it to grow, because each time you grow, the universe grows through you. Okay? So from a spatial perspective, you're a tiny lump of tissue sitting on a tiny planet in a tiny solar system at the edge of a galaxy. But from a consciousness perspective, you are the single most important thing for the universe. And the universe has spent 14 billion years to bring you to where you are so that you can fulfill what the universe needs for its growth. Okay? If you think about it this way, your entire perspective to life changes. I'm going to add one more dimension which will be revolutionary. You are not unconscious, nor is the universe unconscious, because we both come from the pure consciousness of Satchidananda, and that energy, that consciousness, and that love of the Satchidananda fills the whole universe, fills you, and embraces the whole universe and draws it back into its heart of love. That power that energy, that consciousness we call Divine Mother, Shakti. Divine Mother is the creative energy that gives birth to the universe, that gives birth to us also. And she is in us equally, pushing. The whole evolutionary impulse within us is her will pushing us to grow, as a mother nurtures her child to assist the child to grow. So know that you are never alone. Not only the whole universe looks up to you for help, but the Divine Mother and her energy, which creates the whole universe, is within you to help you to grow. And ask for her help. We are too busy thinking we are alone, and so we don't ask for help. But you will say, but she can help anyway, why should I ask? Because there's a difference. You see, if somebody is drowning in water, and you reach out your hand and say, grab my hand, and the person says, no, I will fight myself. Well, you can't help the person. If instead the person reaches out his hand, you can grab and pull him out. Your call for help is the link that you make, which allows the Divine Mother to pull you out, or to fill you with the energy, or the knowledge, or the strength, or the love to do what you have to do. That's why the call is so important. It opens the gate which allows the help. So, all come from the same place, but all souls have taken different births for a different purpose, following their own line of development. Some are more mature, some are more developed, some are less developed. So, as the person asks, someone becomes very effective in life, someone else may be always struggling. Well, they may represent different stages of growth, of capacity or maturity. Or simply the soul chooses, I want to live a life of nothing, just to see what it's like. But always the Divine Mother is there to help you. She is within you. Now think about it in this way. Now this is the insight which I want to end with. Where do you get your intelligence? Did you think up your intelligence? Did you build your intelligence? No. It woke up in itself within you, right? But it was there somehow. Where did you get your body? Did you make it? No. It just grew out of itself. Where do you get your life energy? Do you gather it consciously? No, it just fills you and grows, right? Who is it that is growing in you? What is it? Where is it coming from? And this is the deep insight. All your intelligence is the knowledge that comes from the origin, from the Divine Mother that fills you with her intelligence. All your strength is her energy filling you, right? So there's a very interesting statement in the mantra. Sri Aurobindo says it's a mantra given for India's freedom, which is called Bande Mataram. You know Bande Mataram, you have learned by heart. So in one of the lines there, you are praying to Mother India and you say, Bahute tume ma Shakti. That is, in the arms, you are the energy. Hridaye tume ma Bhakti. In the heart, you are the love and devotion. And in the intellect, you are the intelligence and the knowledge. Isn't it? So here's an interesting insight. None of these are yours. It is she who fills you with her intelligence, with her strength, with her love. And to the extent that you open yourself consciously and ask for help, she fills you with more. And when you give yourself to her, then you open yourself most fully and she fills you with everything. And that's how you accelerate your evolution. So something extraordinary happened when India was fighting for freedom. The most ordinary people from the villages came forward ready to sacrifice their life for the motherland. And they became heroes, gigantic, larger than life heroes. Why? Because they gave themselves to the Divine Mother who filled them with her love and strength and knowledge. This is your key. When you cling to a small goal, you become small with the goal. When you give yourself to a goal that is greater than yourself, you grow to fulfill that. And its greatness fills you. When you give yourself to the Divine Mother, and the Divine Mother as Mother India is the way you can most easily relate to her, then she fills you with everything necessary for your growth and builds you to be worthy of all that you can be. And so there's a very interesting message that Sri Aurobindo gave when he was completing his role as the head of the Baroda College, and he had created it to create young people who would work for the greatness of Mother India. So I will read out now what he said. He says, "The only piece of advice that I can give you now is carry on the work, the mission for which this college was created." And what was this mission? He says that when we establish this college, we hope to see in it the foundation, the nucleus of a nation, of the new India, which is to begin its career after this night of sorrow and trouble, on that day of glory and greatness when India will work for the world. Okay? And then he says, when I come back, I wish to see some of you becoming rich. Rich not for yourselves, but that you may enrich the mother with your riches. I wish to see some of you becoming great. Great not for your own sakes, not that you may satisfy your own vanity, but great for her, to make India great, to enable her to stand up with head erect among the nations of the earth, as she did in the days of yore, when the world looked up to her for light. And then I skip a little bit. He says, if you will study for her sake. Train yourselves, body and mind and soul, for her service. You will earn your living that you may live for her sake. You will go abroad to foreign lands that you may bring back knowledge with which you may do service to her. Work that she may prosper. Suffer that she may rejoice. All is contained in that one single advice. Very powerful words, very moving, but entirely relevant for us. The mantra given to us is Vande Mataram. Within you is the strength, the love, and the wisdom of the Divine Mother. Dedicate your lives to the service of the Divine Mother as Mother India and as the Divine Mother in the hearts of all human beings. And with the strength that she will give you, you will find success, fulfillment, and the deepest, most lasting satisfaction for which you were born on earth.
Thank you so much, Shraddhalu. This was so beautiful. Very enriching session. There's Pragya Upadhyay, our school counselor, is asking the text from which you have read out or you remembered and read out.
Yes, I will send it on email to you. You can circulate.
I can circulate it. It was very beautiful. It was a very befitting end. There are some more. Should we just see if we've left out?
Another time. We'll do the questions another time.
Okay.
But let us hold this
Hold this
vision
together.
and this
Yes.
devotion and love for the Divine Mother and Mother India.
Right. And Archana ma'am, please give your vote of thanks.
So thank you, sir, from the core of our heart. We don't have enough words to express our gratitude, and making it so simple. All of us children sitting here and the adults could grasp it with so much of ease that obviously we all will be basking in the glory of what you said for the coming days. The 3 tools which you told, obviously they were known to all. But everybody keeps telling, practice concentration, you need to improve on your willpower. But how? And you made it so simple, sir. So from the lump of tissue to the most significant person in the universe, the journey you made so simple, sir. We all are indebted, forever indebted, sir. And the last verse, we could see the way your emotions were flooded on your face. So Pragya is right. We would like this to have. And yes, Vande Mataram resonates in our souls for forever. But at the same time, we all would like to express our gratitude to Anjali ma'am, Promini ma'am for exposing us to this. We all mortals became immortal in your words. I think that is the best tribute we can offer you. And thank you so much, sir, from the Jaipuria family, infinite gratitude. And as ma'am said, we'll observe 30-second silence before we end the session.
And before we start the silence, because after that we will end the session, Shraddhaluji, sir, we would like to invite you to be a permanent part of our school. And our children have all wanted that you once in a while take out time to address our students on Zoom. It will just take up your 1.5 hours, but it will go a very, very long way in the growth and progress of our students towards the divine consciousness. So this is our request to you with folded hands. We invite you to be a permanent member of our school.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Shraddhalu sir. Thank you, Pramani ma'am. Thank you, Archana ma'am.
We never want this session to end, ma'am.
Yeah, that's what Sarthak Mishra,
for forever.
Sarthak Mishra was saying. I was shocked to realize that today is the 5th day.
Yes.
So thank
you all, and Vande Mataram.
Vande Mataram, and we would like to give you the digital clap. This is our digital clap.
Okay.
Everybody who wants to clap for sir, let's have a digital clap. Yes. Thank you so much, Shraddhalu sir. Thank you, students.